there, my name is Alison Wood. I've been a member of the Wilton Singers since 2009. Thanks so much for buying our cookbook and for checking out this recipe. I know it's a lot of prep time, but I promise it is worth it. You may recognize this if you're a longtime feast attendee. This was a staple for the soup course for several years. It's my absolute favorite soup, and I don't even like butternut squash. Even my dad, who refuses to try anything squash, likes this soup. So, of course, I had to reach out to Chef Jerry for his recipe. You may have heard that, sadly, Jerry passed away earlier this year from coronavirus. He was the Wilton Singers chef for over 30 years, and it was a very heavy loss for those of us who worked closely with him. We will miss him dearly, which is why I am now making this soup in his honor. This one's for you, Jerry. Let's get to it. I've made this soup several times over the years, but it's been a while, and in the interim I've changed to a vegan diet, so I'll be swapping out a couple of the ingredients here for dairy-free versions. You're welcome to follow me or the original recipe. It's basically the same other than those couple of swaps. The original recipe is for catering, so I divided the servings down to 8. Feel free to halve or double as you see fit. The soup does freeze up well, and the flavors get better with age. As you'll see here, I have pre-cut squash. It's just a little bit easier because it's difficult to cut the whole ones, but use whichever you prefer. You can start by preheating your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Then get a large mixing bowl. If you have to chop up your squash, this would be the time to do it. Dump it into the bowl. Add in ground cinnamon, ground nutmeg, ground cloves, olive oil, and maple syrup. Mix that around until everything is nice and coated, and then spread it evenly on a baking sheet. Pop it in the oven and roast it uncovered for 20 minutes. After the 20 minutes is up, remove the pan and cover it with foil so that your squash doesn't burn. Return it to the oven for another 40 minutes. When there's about 10 minutes left on your timer, you can prep the second half of your ingredients. Roughly chop the onion and garlic. It doesn't matter if it's pretty, it's all going to be blended into the soup at the end. I suggest measuring out your flour, broth, cream, and sugar so it's ready to toss in. Some of these steps move kind of fast, and it's easier to have it ready to go. When it's all done, remove the squash from the oven, take off the foil, and let it cool while you prepare the soup base. Pull out a heavy soup pot, or I'm using a Dutch oven here, whatever you have on hand is fine. Set it to a medium to low heat on my stove. I usually use 3 for everything. Drop in your stick of butter to melt, or in my case, Country Crock, the vegan version. Once it's fully melted, you can add your onions, cook them until they're translucent, and then add your garlic. I like to add garlic second because it tends to burn more easily. Once the onions and garlic are tender, you can add the flour to make a roux. Stir it constantly until it browns to your preference. I like it mildly toasty, so I'm looking for a light brown here. Make sure you have your stock on hand so you can pour it in and stop it from cooking so it doesn't get browner than you want it to be. At this point, you're going to add the rest of your ingredients. Add the stock, cream, sugar, and salt and pepper to taste. Stir constantly until the soup starts to thicken, and then you're going to add in your pieces of roasted butternut squash. Make sure you add all the drippings from the pan. There's a lot of good flavor in there, you don't want to miss out on any of that. Once everything is all mixed together, you're going to get an immersion blender and puree the soup. If you don't have an immersion blender, you can always pour this into a food processor or regular blender, whatever you have on hand. Just be careful if you're pouring it from one pot to the other, since it will be hot. At this point, you want to taste it, see if it needs any more salt and pepper, remove it from the stove, and serve. I think this is perfectly delicious as it is, but if you'd like, you can chop up a little bit of fresh parsley, put on some pumpkin seeds or some pine nuts, something to give it a little extra crunch. Croutons are always good, or a nice piece of crusty bread. And there you have it, Chef Jerry Reveron's butternut squash soup with my own little twist. Thanks so much for following along with me. I know this one's a little time consuming, but trust me, it is totally worth it.